Princess Diana feared that palace officials were conspiring to undermine her and take her sons away, according to one of her oldest friends. Dr. James Colthurst said royal aides could not accept the amount of attention she received compared to Charles and wanted to sideline her and separate her from her children. The claims echo Diana's comments in the Channel 4 film, in which she says, "Friends on my husband's side were indicating that I was unstable, sick, and should be put in a home of some sort in order to get better. There is no better way to dismantle a personality than to isolate it." Dr. Colthurst, 60, who had known Diana since she was 17, says in the documentary, there was a great deal of jealousy from the grey men who sat behind Prince Charles, not wanting him to be living in her shadow. Her character was being written down, as she saw it, a campaign to sideline her and remove her from the boys. That was her worry, that she was going to lose the boys, overriding, above everything else, that was the concern, and that they were using a character rundown as a means of making that happen, an understandable next step. But he insists that Diana's insecurity, and her long battle with bulimia, sprang from her husband's ongoing relationship with Camilla Parker Bowles. Dr. Colthurst disputes claims that Diana's mental state was responsible for pushing Charles back to his former lover. "I don't think the concerns about Camilla ever stopped," says Dr. Colthurst, who acted as go-between when Diana collaborated with Andrew Morton on the sensational book, Diana, My True Story. He says, she was aware of things that had been going on. The staff all knew. Everybody knew where he was going, so she didn't know who to trust. I could see her fading, physically. It was clear the bulimia was a reaction to the circumstances she found herself in, he said. Similarly, Diana says in the film, everyone knew about the bulimia in the family and they all blamed the failure of the marriage on the bulimia. And that's taken some time to get them thinking differently. Diana says she told the family, "I was rejected, I didn't think I was good enough for this family, so I took it out on myself. I could have gone to alcohol, which would have been obvious. I could have gone anorexic, which would have been even more obvious. I tried to do it more discreetly. Which ultimately wasn't discreet. But I chose to hurt myself instead of hurting all of you." Dr. Colthurst says the marriage turmoil, which came to be known as the War of the Waleses, threatened to engulf not just the combatants themselves, but virtually anyone with any association to the royal family, forcing them to choose one side or the other. In the film he recalls, "It became a condition of your patriotism, that you must therefore support the Prince of Wales, the belief that if we were loyal monarchists, we had to be on his side. Well, I'm sorry, as a loyal monarchist my loyalties were to the principles of the British Crown. And I saw royal virtues embodied in her more than in him." The real damage was done by those who tried to marginalize Diana or in more recent years airbrush her out of royal history. They saw that their man's path to the crown would be a great deal easier if he were not competing for popularity with his ex-wife. Princess Diana's former private secretary Patrick Jeffson tells the documentary makers that her enemies did not reckon on her capacity to fight back in her own way. He says, "She was on the receiving end of a whispering campaign in which everything from her competence as a princess to her suitability as a mother and indeed her very sanity were being questioned. She was faced with a choice, of either meekly turning a deaf ear on everything being said about her and falling in with the plans of people who wanted to see her excluded, marginalized, or doing something about it. She chose to fight back in some pretty unconventional ways. She actually was an extraordinarily strong person. The people who criticized her always underestimated her, not least they underestimated her anger. She was a proud aristocratic woman who had been very badly treated." Speaking to the Mail on Sunday, Mr. Jeffson added, "She had a backbone of steel and if you pushed her into a corner, as she was, and if you made her feel that she was unjustly treated, there was a defiance in her and it was sometimes reckless, and as her private secretary it caused me a few problems." Inspector Ken Worf, Diana's police bodyguard for 8 years, also appears in the program. Speaking to the Mail on Sunday, he revealed how her attempts to become more involved with Charles's interests were often rebuffed. I remember one instance when we arrived back at Kensington Palace and the Prince of Wales went to visit his churches in the city. He was going alone. She felt rather sorry for him and asked, "Do you want me to come with you?" He said, "No, I don't want you, they'll only be interested in you." So despite that, there was still that process of wanting to help, even with her husband where circumstances were difficult, this trying to make it work.